Hey folks, it's Sunday.
Hey folks, it's Monday. Tuesday.
Wednesday.
Thursday.
Friday.
Saturday.
Sunday. So this week is Inspiration Week, and it's kind of a vague topic, but I figured I'd just tell you my inspiration for like all of my creative projects. I really draw my inspiration from things that other people have done. So, like, for example, all of the DIY projects that I've been doing this summer, I haven't been following the instructions for most of them, and that's because when I think someone else does something cool, I want to do it but my own way. So, for example, this painting, which kind of used painter's tape to cut out the area for the umbrella and such, which I thought was really cool. I saw a picture similar to this on Pintrest, but I wanted to do it my own way, so I did. And I used different colors, and I used my hands and string and glitter, and I did it my own way, but I got the inspiration from something that someone else has done. Similarly, I saw little notebooks on Pinterest that people had made out of paint chips, paint samples, whatever, and I chose to use some of my bookmaking knowledge that I got from the class that I took last semester and make my own version. Even more than with arts and crafts, I draw a lot of my writing inspiration from other writers, in particular poetry. Now, I've never been a poet, really. Like, I've written poetry most of my life just because it seemed like the natural progression of the things that I like to write. But also, and I've never taken like a formal poetry class. Like, I've had classes where I had to write, like creative writing classes that I had to write a poem or two poems for, but I've never actually had like a this is how you write poetry class. Recently I started doing a lot of slam poetry. There's videos of that on my main channel, and you can go watch that if you ever want to. But I get the most inspiration for my poetry from other people performing slam poetry. So every time I go to a poetry slam, which I apparently go to a lot, so I go to a lot of writers open mic nights and poetry slams around my college. And whenever I go to those, you know, I usually read, but when other people are reading their stuff, especially people who I really admire and whose work is really great, I always find myself having an idea for a poem that I want to write. So I always bring a notebook and a pen to writers open mic nights because I always get inspiration. Some of my best poetry comes from listening to other people write poetry and like read their own poetry and then wanting to write it myself. So yeah, that's a huge inspiration for me. And I don't want you to think I'm copying them, like they say something and I'm like, oh, I could write a poem about the same thing. No, it's usually they have like a line in their poem that speaks to something larger in me, and I'm like, oh, I should totally expand on that. And then I end up doing it. I don't get so much inspiration from other people in my fiction writing. My fiction writing is more, I like explosions and stuff. Let's see what I can do with that. but definitely in my poetry, I write a lot better when I hear other people read their work that I really admire. Like George Watsky, sometimes I just rewatch his poetry slam videos on YouTube because they're so good, and because I want to be like George Watsky someday with my poetry, at least. I don't think I'd do very well as a rapper. Okay, Shane, I'll see you tomorrow.